Hello viewers, this week Polyphony have been cooking with this Daily Race C, a 24 lap race around Spa in Group 2 cars. Means for a total race time of over 50 minutes. And this is a combo that's only happened once before. Let's take a look. Yes, a very rare occurrence is Spa in Group 2 cars, so it's good to see it back, especially in an endurance format. Now let's take a look at this, because into the first apex of the first corner of the first lap, I get myself a penalty. And you can see, not happy about that. First, literally the first corner, even before I'd actually crossed the start line technically. So that's a bit of a disaster. But that is not going to set the tone for the rest of this race, because the rest of this race was epic. Take a look at the group, the entire pack streaming through the Eau Rouge Radion section of the track. The pack does get a little bit spread out with the rolling start, and of course the fact that you have the chicane at the start. Anyone starting 10th or back kind of gets cut off immediately. Now we're going to go for our first overtake up against Piratical Tom 21. Had a poor run through Pouon. We are though going to have to serve this penalty in just a moment, up behind J Batman 14. And here is the penalty line halfway up the hill towards Blanchimont. So going back to 15th, this is effectively where my race actually begins. And then we're going to get our first yellow flag of the race as we go through Blanchimont. There's going to be someone in the wall, kind of like Kimi Räikkönen back in 2008. Anyway, into the chicane. Let's try not to repeat our mistake of getting a penalty through that first apex. Now the two in front, fighting quite hard, and of course, you know, it's a race. You're meant to fight to some extent. But it's also a long race, 24 laps, and you do want to be as consistent as possible. It is quite hard to gain back time that you lose by fighting, and so we do have to be nice and efficient here with our overtakes. The best chance I would say to overtake is into the Les Combes chicane here at the end of the Kemmel Straight, and we're going to try and demonstrate that here to good effect. So up the inside into 13th, a lowly 13th. I mean, I started 15th. This was my first race on this combination, and for those who would like to know, I did say that it had been in the game once before as we catch up with the big group in front. It was actually back in March 2022 that this combination appeared, so pretty much when the game actually first came out. So it's been since then that we haven't actually seen this combo, unless it's been in Manufacturers Cup or the Nations Cup, but not in a daily race. But here we are in October 2024, back on this combination. So this group in front, quite a lot of fighting in the mid-pack. Once again, we're going to try and fight our way through as quick as possible. This one turned out to be a close call with the Dutch driver here. So down the back straight, I go to the right, he actually swerves a lot along, and it's no surprise that he was caught in an incident earlier, which has dropped him a few positions. That was a bit of iffy driving. Thankfully managed to go through around the outside and get the job done. And that's what I was speaking about earlier, just trying to get the move done as efficiently as possible with minimal time loss. That is always a good idea. Otherwise the guys in front do get too far ahead. And speaking of the cars in front, take a look at the gap here, 10.8 seconds to the race leader. That's always something I'm just checking up on, just to see how that progresses, if I'm losing time, gaining time. You know, if that gap is getting smaller, then that's probably a good sign. Anyway, end of lap number 3, sat here in 12th place, now up behind a Nissan GTR. Group 2 does have the issue, I think, of just general balance. It is the Super GT cars which tend to be the quickest, and also within that, Honda NSX, which 99% of people are choosing. However, the Nissan GTR often is a solid contender as well. Up the inside into the last source. This is about the tactics here. Up the inside, that's great. The car in front does not have slipstream in front. Therefore, this should be a slam dunk overtake, as long as we get the timing dead right. The Group 2 cars are flat out through through the Radion and Eau Rouge section of the track. I couldn't even remember what it's called. And thankfully here we get a bump draft, and it definitely is a slam dunk overtake with a helping hand from behind. and that's 10th place. Now, looking behind on the radar and momentarily on the exit of this chicane, the cars behind are battling quite hard. That's good news for me. I can just pull away and not have to worry about them too much. Car in front with a 0.5 second penalty. I'm 1.3 seconds behind. Is this close enough to get this overtake done? Maybe not. I move the bias to the rear to protect the front tyres slightly. Look at this. It would be an awkward moment to go up the inside here, so I just back off slightly on the throttle. And thankfully, as we go through Blanchimont, this guy actually moves to the left-hand side and lets me through. And that's quite a nice, easy overtake. There is always this worry on this track, given the nature of it. You have the middle sector, which is very twisty, quite difficult to overtake. Then you have Sector 3 and Sector 1, which are largely straight lines with the odd big braking zone. But it's through Sector 3 and Sector 1 that it's very hard to shake someone from behind and get away from them. And that kind of proves to be the point here as we go down the Kemmel Straight. Luckily enough for me, this guy was willing to work with me. So there's always that worry that you overtake someone, they just slipstream back past you again on the straight. That wasn't the case here. So let's take a look at the map again. It's very much split into a couple of groups. We have the leading group, and then I'm kind of chasing down a little group in front. And then we have the rear group. Now, unfortunately for me, the working together didn't last long as the guy behind actually misjudged his braking zone, went flying to the back of me. I've got rear bumper damage, and then he actually spins out on the exit of No Name Corner, which I think might have a name now. Although I guess No Name is a name, so that is kind of a weird one there. We do see a group in front, 3 cars in that group, with 3 seconds to try to catch them up. Well, the gap is 3 seconds. I still have like 17 laps to try and catch them up, or 19 laps should I say. So that is the beauty of this endurance format. We do have endurance races from time to time in Gran Turismo, maybe once a month at most. And then by endurance we're talking, let's say 45 minutes or longer. Anyway, by lap 9, end of, we are catching very much up with this group as they begin to be fighting with each other. And this is the thing, you don't really want to fight too much in this kind of race. I mean, you do want to fight, you want to overtake each other, but you're just constantly defending and swapping position all the time. It is a bit worthless. You kind of need to get your business done and move on quickly. Anyway, up behind Dirty Raccoon now, through the first corner. He doesn't actually get the best of runs through there, and therefore we're going to go side by side down the hill towards the famous corner. We should be able to go flat out through here, even side by side as we do, and he eventually tucks in behind. I do thankfully have the momentum and the slipstream from the car in front, so he's not going to be able to reply here and slipstream back past me. So that's 8th position. I think the progress has been really good, and just monitoring the gap to the lead, 9.8 seconds. It was actually less than it was when we checked it a few laps ago. So that's a promising sign, either that I guess my pace is okay, but also maybe the cars in front are fighting, and there's always a chance that something can happen up there. So you have to keep pushing. That's why this kind of race is great. It does give you a chance long term to gain some positions. You just have to be very patient and very consistent with your driving. Please do let me know your thoughts in the comments about this kind of race. I mean, this isn't everyone's cup of tea. Sometimes this can definitely be a bit too long. It really is a commitment to, you know, sit down and play one race for 50 minutes. Especially if you make a mistake and then you're off the back of the pack and you're miles off. So it's not always going to be everyone's cup of tea, that's for sure. I personally do like this kind of race every now and then. I mean, we've always spoken about the theory of a daily race D or extra sport mode races, given that sport mode is a bit bare bones and not really any progress made since Gran Turismo Sport. So side by side through Blanchimont with Hodgson GT, who's in the Nissan GT500, and try and go around the outside here. So we go into the chicane side by side, but eventually I do enough to get the position. Move up into 6th. I mean, there's a couple of people going into the pit lane here, so this is the phase of the race where a bit of strategy comes in. With low tyre wear, it's not like you can really get huge undercuts by going into the pit lane early, but maybe just to avoid traffic. That is the reason why you do it. So the guy in front with a 0.5 second penalty, I think I should be close enough here at 0.8 to get past him, and that is going to be the case as we then move up into 4th. Now, not a legitimate 4th, because as I say, some people have pitted, and you now see a couple of clusters. One, the leading group, the little group I'm in, and then the group at the back is all the guys who have pitted pretty much. So I'm going to go 1 lap more. I'm going to split this race exactly in half, do 2 12-lap stints. So at the end of lap 12, it was my turn to peel off to the right-hand side. Into the pit lane we go. I'm going to take the choice to change my tyres, and we're going to find out that's not going to be the choice that everyone made. On the exit of the pit lane, car straightens up, get on the power, and away we go. Now back in 9th place with half the race left to go, 26 minutes on the clock already, and you can see there's a bit more of a resemblance of a normal race order here, as we are now exactly 10 seconds behind the race lead. So that distance has kind of stayed fairly static. Shows that my pace is, I guess, quite good, especially given this is my first attempt at this race in the week. So into the chicane we go. We've definitely caught up with this group, and it turned out that a couple of these guys clearly did not change their tyres in the pit lane. And yes, they gain a couple of seconds, maybe 2 seconds, by not doing so. But over the course of this entire stint, they are going to lose quite a lot of time there, because their tyres are just going to be really bad throughout the majority of this, well, throughout the entirety of this second stint. I definitely recommend changing your tyres, especially on a race this long. When the race is 51 minutes long, saving 2 seconds in the pit lane is less valuable, let's say, than a shorter race. So now we have ourselves 2 slower cars to fight back past. These 2 guys I overtook in the first stint, having to do it again, given that they've jumped back ahead of me. So it might seem like a bit of a loss to get the tyres, but it's definitely not. Play the long game here. This is only lap 15. I'm going to get past them soon enough. And then still 9 more laps left to go with them on shockingly bad tyres. They're just trying to work out the strategy here as they go side by side into the chicane on the brakes. Take a look at what's going to happen. Dupe actually brakes really early, kind of lets us go through, doesn't really want to fight it too much. And Raccoon, well, this is about the strategic driving, I guess, around Spa. Do you just go for the move into last source? The strategy here that I was employing really was that there's no one directly in front, and therefore I might as well time my momentum, which is what I'm going to do here. So you get yourself a nice sort of 3/10 gap, and then you just go flat out effectively. And if you do this, you should be able to slingshot past on this straight. I would say that with the custom slipstream that this lobby has, it doesn't feel quite as strong as it normally is. As we go down the straight, I kind of hold a central line. He's trying to turn left. I'm kind of not having it. Trying to force him a little bit narrow. We do eventually go around the outside and gain back 6th place, or gain for the first time in the race 6th place, a legitimate 6th place, but with ambition of moving further forward than that. Let's take a look at the gap in front. 3.5 seconds. You can see them. And this is the thing I really like about endurance racing, sort of the visual aspect as we move from lap 16 to 21. That visual aspect has very much changed, as you see the 2 cars in front are quite clearly closer. We've taken a good 5 laps here, so let's say 10 minutes of racing to get very close. In fact, on that shot there, all 5 cars were within sight at one point. And so the leader's only now 7.9 seconds in front. Unfortunately, I get blocked off here. The German, going off the circuit with dirty tyres, just does enough to kind of keep me behind. I couldn't really do too much there. Bit of a frustrating scenario, knowing that this guy had dirty tyres and I couldn't quite get through, especially this late in the race. That's probably cost me, well, a position at minimum, but also about a second, maybe a second and a half. So I could be a lot closer to that car up in 4th had I got through in that moment. But we are going to size him up for a lovely overtake here into the Piff Paff. We're going to run him narrow, go around the outside, boom, job done. And that was a lovely overtake. Sometimes you do have to be creative. That's not normally a place you really go for an overtake on this race, but sometimes you can do it there. So lap 21, up into 5th. We started 15th. That's a net gain of 10 if you're good at math. And we are going to be stalked all the way up the hill here. And this is the kind of problem now, I suppose, towards the tail end of this race. I really have ambition still of moving forward. You can see that the Russian there in 3rd has actually dropped slightly. So there's 2 cars within reachable reach, if that's a good way to put it, which it isn't. And therefore, I really want to push forward and try to catch up with them, which kind of happens here. I felt like my pace was genuinely quite solid here. Lapping in the low 206s, I know that I can actually go into the 205s on good laps. And so the pace was solid, consistency was solid, and I was a frustrating 1.3 seconds behind this group. Couldn't quite do enough to catch them up. But as ever, with a short time remaining in the race, you never know what might happen. I pushed a little bit too hard through Poo on there, lap 23, and the gap actually increases to the cars in front. They are nose to tail though, and therefore that could potentially give us a chance. I sense that they may well battle on this final lap. I mean, it is the last lap, and this is where you start really fighting and losing the time if you want. As we head out onto the back straight up towards Blanchimont, I am still being stalked here by the German behind, and therefore there's still a chance of finishing in 6th place. As we come down the hill here, take a look at the map. We are going to have a spin at the top of the hill from Dane Ramster as we head up the hill. Here he is, recovering from the aforementioned crash. We are going to take a look at what happened later. We're now up into 4th, and the 2 cars in front are fighting. And so there's potential here for maybe a P3, even a P2 if they really get it wrong. But also, let's not forget, P5 is right behind us, and therefore kind of got to be careful. Ideally, I need to have a really good middle sector here to open up enough of a gap to not be vulnerable into the final chicane on this final lap. That would be the ideal scenario. I don't really want to have to defend into that final chicane and give myself some stress. So let's have a good couple of corners here into Pouon, off the brake, roll the car through, back on the power. That was okay. Could have been done a little bit quicker. But I felt quite good through the piff path here coming up. Again, off the brake, let the car roll, back on the power. There's so much downforce in these Group 2 cars around here. It would be great to see them drive around here one day. Not that Super GT cars would come here, and of course DTM have moved on to GT3 cars these days. So back up the hill, 6/10 margin. Thankfully that is enough, unless he's going to go for an absolute dive bomb. This was a really good race. I wasn't quite able to get on the podium, but I'm really happy with my progress from 15th. A really, really satisfying race there. So great job from Polyphony to give us such an amazing race. Oh my god, guys, that was unbelievable. It's a shame I couldn't quite push a tiny bit more and get maybe a second was on there. Second was definitely on. Yeah, there's a couple of things to see, I suppose, in that race. It was here, wasn't it? Oh, that is a move. Get a load of that, mate. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's one of them. And he's lost all the positions to us.